In the early years of the Meiji Restoration, Japan was changing faster than its people could process. Western technology, clothing, and systems poured into the country. Along with them came bread. But to a population raised entirely on rice and seafood, this early Western staple was a hard, sour, and unappealing novelty. In 1874, a former samurai named Kimura Yasube decided to fix this cultural disconnect. He realized that if bread was going to survive in Japan, it needed to adapt to the local palate. Instead of using imported beer yeast, which gave Western bread its sour edge, Kimura turned to sakadane, the same natural liquid yeast starter used to brew Japanese sake. This rice and koji malt fermentation gave the dough a distinctively sweet aroma and a texture that was incredibly soft, moist, and pillowy. For the filling, he took inspiration from wagashi, traditional Japanese confectionery, and stuffed the dough with anko, a sweet, slow-cooked red bean paste. He called his creation anpan. It was the world's first true fusion of Western baking and Japanese flavor. The hybrid pastry was a massive success, eventually even being presented to Emperor Meiji himself. Today, standing outside that very same bakery in Ginza, you can still buy the exact same recipe. It remains the undisputed blueprint for all Japanese sweetbread that followed. Following the wild success of the red bean bun, Japanese bakers faced a new dilemma. Customers loved the soft, sake fermented dough, but they wanted variety. The problem was that standard bakery buns all looked identical from the outside. If a customer bought a box, they couldn't tell the fillings apart until they took a bite. In 1900, the very same Kimura Bakery in Ginza introduced a new contender filled with sweet, tart strawberry jam. To distinguish it from its round, red bean older brother, they intentionally shaped the dough into a distinct oval, mimicking the shape of a leaf or a classic gemstone. This became Jampan. It introduced a bright, fruity, Western-style sweetness to the lineup. More importantly, it established a permanent design visual language in Japanese baking. A bread's external shape should tell you exactly what is hidden inside. Just 4 years after the debut of the jam roll, another major evolution occurred in Tokyo. In 1904, a baker named Coco Soma tried a French-style custard cream puff for the very first time. She was captivated by the rich, velvety texture of the pastry cream, but felt the delicate choux pastry shell was too fleeting. She wondered if that same luxurious custard could be housed inside something more substantial, something that felt like a real meal. She decided to inject the sweet custard directly into Japan's signature soft, sweetened milk dough. The result was cream pan. To prevent the wet custard from bursting out of the bread as it baked and expanded in the hot oven, Soma shaped the dough into a distinct glove or fan shape, cutting small slits along the outer edge. This simple engineering trick allowed steam to escape safely during the baking process. That unique, hand-like shape became a permanent trademark. More than a century later, the shape is universally recognized across Japan, representing a successful marriage between European pastry technique and everyday Japanese comfort food. As the early decades of the 20th century progressed, Japanese bakers began experimenting with spatial design, looking for ways to make eating bread more interactive and fun for children. They moved away from simple stuffed buns and turned to a shape inspired by European wind instruments. By wrapping a single strand of soft milk bread dough around a conical metal horn, bakers created a spiral, hollow shell. Once baked and slipped off the mold, the bread held a perfect, whimsical tunnel shape. This was the Corone. Named after the cornet musical instrument, the Corone became famous for its filling, a thick, decadent chocolate custard pudding. It created a unique way to eat sweet bread, forcing children to decide whether to bite from the wide, cream-filled top or break off the pointed tail to dip into the chocolate core. While fillings dominated the early days of sweetbread, a breakthrough in texture occurred when bakers looked at the exterior of the dough. Walk into any contemporary Japanese convenience store, and you will immediately notice a large, domed pastry covered in a geometric grid. This is melon pan. Despite its name, the classic version of this bread contains no melon flavor whatsoever. The name comes entirely from its appearance, which mirrors the cross-hatched, netted rind of a cantaloupe melon. What makes melon pan a masterpiece of textures is its dual-nature construction. It is not just a bread, it is a hybrid of a sweet yeast roll and a classic sugar cookie. Bakers take a standard ball of soft milk dough and carefully drape a thick sheet of sugary cookie crust directly over the top before baking. As it expands in the oven, the bread rises rapidly while the cookie top expands and fractures along the scored lines, creating a beautifully crisp, shell-like exterior. It provides a distinct sensory experience, a loud, sugary crunch that immediately gives way to a soft, cloud-like interior. In the grim years following the Second World War, Japan faced severe food shortages. To combat widespread childhood malnutrition, the government heavily revamped the national school lunch program, known as Kyushoku. Because rice facilities were destroyed, these meals centered around a simple, plain white bread roll called a kappapan. The rolls were functional and packed with calories, but they were often dry, cold, and unpopular with the children. They were a symbol of a difficult, austere era. That changed in 1952 in Oda Ward, Tokyo. A creative school cook named Shigeo Tanaka was looking for a way to breathe life into leftover stale bread rolls so they wouldn't go to waste. He decided to drop the plain rolls directly into a deep fryer for just a few seconds. The hot oil instantly revived the bread, making it crisp on the outside and remarkably soft within. While the roll was still glistening with oil, Tanaka tossed it in a sweet mixture of sugar and kinako, a traditional roasted soybean flour with a deep, nutty, peanut butter-like aroma. He called it Agepan. Agepan was an immediate sensation. It transformed school lunch from a chore into the highlight of the week for millions of children across the country. Today, it remains a powerful piece of edible nostalgia, completing the final pillar of Japan's classic sweetbread history.